In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at the LoaderMax framework by Greensock. So you may have an image gallery with 50 images and you want to load all 50 images right away, have the user wait a little bit longer, but then once they're in the application, there's no waiting time. This is a lot of ActionScript code to write if you want this to happen automatically, or with just the default loader objects in ActionScript 3. So LoaderMax really makes this pretty easy. Anyone familiar with BulkLoader? This is very similar to BulkLoader, but it's quite a bit more efficient. It's about half the file size, and quite a bit more extensible. You can really do a lot of things with this. To get started, you need to download the ActionScript 3 code. This is Flash Player 9 ActionScript 3 compatible. Those ActionScript 2 people out there, you're out of luck here. This is only available for ActionScript 3. Once you download that, you get a zip file. In that zip file, there's a COM folder, and you just need to copy this COM folder into your project directory. So it just has to be at the same level as your FLA. Now, I have an XML folder, and in that folder, a XML file. Pretty simple one. We're just going to load in 3 different images: ps.jpg, fl.jpg, and fc.jpg. You'll notice the naming that I'm using in this XML file. I'm actually following what is suggested by LoaderMax, and I'm doing this because I want to take advantage of some built-in parsing. There's some really cool kind of automatic parsing logic built into LoaderMax that you can just pass it this sort of XML file, and it will automatically load in all 3 of these images and let you know when it's done. You can get to be pretty complicated with this as well. You can add in here video loaders, XML loaders, CSS style sheet loaders. It's not limited to just images. You can mix assets, and again, LoaderMax will just alert you when all of them are loaded. And you can even load in combination of LoaderMax objects, and that gets to be a lot more complicated. We're going to kind of stay with an easy example. So in Flash, I want to load in some of these images. I'm going to open up my Actions panel here, and I'm going to start working with the LoaderMax object. You'll notice in Flash CS5 you get code hinting for anything that you have in your application directory here. It's one of the nice features, making the Actions panel a little bit more useful. So I'm going to choose this LoaderMax object, which gives me the import statements as well. And I'm going to first activate. Call this activate method. I'm going to pass it a couple of other loader objects here inside the loading package: an XML loader and an image loader. This is sort of the benefit of LoaderMax, is that you have the capability to load a lot of different objects from that one XML file, but you got to make sure that you include the code base for those. And this is just telling LoaderMax to make sure to compile in the XML loader and the image loader. That way you don't get excess code for video loading or style sheet loading if you don't intend on loading those kinds of assets. Now I'm going to make a loader object here that's going to represent my XML loader. I'm going to set it equal to LoaderMax dot parse. I'm going to point it at my XML file. This parse method is the fancy function here that will look at the entire XML file, at all of those nodes in there, and determine which objects it's going to use to load which assets. And this is returning my an XML loader, because that's ultimately what I'm doing, is I'm loading in that XML file. To make it happen, I just have to tell it to load. If I run my movie at this point with Control or Command Enter, nothing will happen. Presumably my assets have loaded, but I have no way of getting at them or even knowing if they are completely loaded yet. I'm going to add a couple of events to my loader object. The first one is for the progress event. This is going to let me know as I'm gaining progress or getting pieces of information here as I'm loading. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this and do the complete event. And call a function load complete. Now again, I need these two functions. So I'm going to make a function load progress. It's going to get passed a loader event. That's what we're working with right now. And then, in the interest of time here, I'm just going to copy and paste that function and make it load complete. As we receive progress, we're going to update the preloader on the stage. There's a text field on the stage called preloader_txt. I'm going to have its text property be equal to math.round e.target.progress, which is the amount of progress that I've received. Multiply it by 100 because it's a decimal, and append onto that a percent sign. Percent sign there. As I run my movie at this point, you should see 100% show up on stage. It's completely loaded all the images. Now this happened really fast because we're on my computer. If I go to the view menu, I can simulate the download to have it simulate a DSL connection, and you'll see the progress at this point tick up a little bit more like it's loading on the web. On complete, we're going to hide my preloader by just setting the visible property equal to false. And at this point, we're going to actually grab a reference to the LoaderMax object that we actually have in the XML. And the way we get that is LoaderMax.getLoader, and we need to pass it the name of the loader that we specified in the XML. So that's the name in, because you can actually have multiple LoaderMax objects. Now, we're going to loop through all of the images and place them on the stage. It's a good practice to always have a container to put any kind of dynamic content in. So at the top here, I'm going to declare an image container as a sprite. And I'm going to add it to the stage. I'm going to put it below anything else. I'm going to add child at image, image container at 0 underneath everything. So back down in our load complete, we're going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm going to paste in some code. So I've just pasted in a little bit of logic that grabs the reference to the loader, as mentioned. Then we're going to loop through all the content of that loader and grab each item, q.content at position I. Content ends up becoming an array. We're grabbing each item, and it's of type content display, which is one of the LoaderMax content types, or a generic content type. I'm adding it to my image container, and I'm actually setting the alpha to 0 initially because we only want to show one at a time. Once we've looped through all of those images, I'm calling a function called showImage0 to show the first thing. The showImage function is pretty simple. It gets past the index that you want to show, so which number image, and it just does a tweenlight.to. So this is the tweening platform, or the tweening code that Greensock has. I'm tweening the alpha property to 1 in half a second. So as I run this, you should see the first image fade in. Next, I want to get these buttons working for the rest of the images. So I'm going to, in kind of by my other event listeners here, I'm going to add event listeners for all 3 buttons. So here are all 3 event listeners for my 3 buttons, B0, B1, and B2. Now there are much more dynamic ways to do this, but I just have those 3 buttons sort of hard-coded on the stage. They're all calling the same function, button click, because I'm using a little naming convention that B0 will load image 0, B1 will show image 1, and B2 will show image 2. So I'm going to make that button click function down at the bottom here. Gets past a mouse event, as all click events do. And all I have to do is figure out which number button is clicked, and I can get that by referencing the current target name, which this is going to be the name of the button that was called, and I'm going to take a substring of that starting at position 1. This is basically going to say if the button, for example, is B1, it's going to start at character 1, which is actually the second character because the first one's 0. It's just going to take that character and any additional ones, where there aren't any, and we're going to convert that to a number. So in the case of B1, this line of code would just set num equal to 1, or 2, or 0, depends on the button. And then I'm going to call the function showImage. I'm going to pass that number to it. So at this point, if I run my movie, clicking any button should now fade in the correct image, grabbed from my image or my LoaderMax. So last but not least, to make this thing airtight, what I want to do is I want to make sure that all the previous images are hidden anytime you load in an object. So I'm going to add in a little bit of code just before I fade in the current image that fades out any existing images. So I'm looping through all the number of children in the image container. I'm going to grab each child, and if the child's alpha property is greater than 0, meaning it's showing, I am going to tween the child's alpha property to 0 in half a second. So this way, as I begin clicking through my buttons and I click back, they're always fading in and out, and now sort of actually does a little of a crossfade. So this ends the tutorial on the LoaderMax framework. I'm just scratching the surface as to its capabilities. So I encourage you to go to greensock.com, select LoaderMax on the left-hand side, and read through the documentation. Take a look at all the ways it can be used. It's really a great framework for loading in multiple assets and sort of simulating that bulk loading process of loading everything initially, preloading it, getting feedback, and then being able to work with the content that's loaded.